Conferencecallhd.com. Access code accepted. You are the only participant in this conference. This conference is being recorded. Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by the pound or hash. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue. You are in the Zoom meeting now. There are 2 meetings.
Hello.
Hey, Jay.
How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
Pretty well. Yeah. Just doing my thing.
Me too.
But any word from Chris if he's gonna join us?
As of yesterday, I know he was going to. I also know he's recording some podcasts today for his Mindful Money platform. So if we don't see him, that's likely why. But as far as I knew, he was supposed to be here.
Cool. Well, we can certainly get started.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the document you have put together here.
Yeah, the things that I have on the list are, obviously we're recording and, broadcasting, all that kind of stuff publicly. And then we can check in. On the previous notes, what I saw, I didn't copy them over. Under next steps, We had sponsorship details, societal equity, distributing community equity profits to individual beneficiaries, ownership, shareholder empowerment meetings. So anyways, those are some of the things. But I think our main topic is really just interplay community equity questions and how to implement community equity within Interplay. And then obviously, there's the reset, one pager on community equity that came up.
Yeah, I'm pulling all these different community equity discussions that we've had up right now.
So yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get anchored into where we left off. Because I know that also we went in our previous board meeting, our board for Interplay Ventures agreed to implement, what was it, I think 25% of Interplay equity, of community equity.
Yeah.
And then I know Chris had some questions, but Chris isn't here, so we might not get those.
Should we text him or anything and see if he needs a reminder, or are we good?
Yeah, I'll send him a message. Excuse me. Okay, he said he'll be here in about 2 minutes, so he's just gonna come.
Cool. Should we get started on the Interplay questions, or should we wait for him? Let's just do some more check-ins if you want to wait.
Yeah, I think we can wait. Either way, it doesn't. We won't get so far into it that it'll be confusing for him. So.
Cool. Well, we can do some more check-ins. I've been doing pretty well. I talked a little bit about in the Wednesday check-in how we're doing this weekly kind of like law by people call, where we're talking about the intersection between design and law, and the idea that when you create a product, for example, a car, right? Or you invent a car, and cars didn't usually exist. Suddenly, not only do you now have a new invention, you have infinite layers upon layers of new laws that just keep expanding and expanding. And so in essence, the product is creating the law, right? And then on the other side, you can also have laws that literally create entire markets. The example of that one was the transportation agency and everything that came out of like 9/11, where you had literally entire new inventions all created about security based on the new laws for the transportation agencies.
Yeah.
And so you get all the different scanning machines and all the different types of machines that are created from that. So anyways, it's just very interesting thinking about the interplay between law and design, and how those go back and forth. And really, like, for me, the way it feels, which also really relates to scale change and a lot of things that Ben's doing, is that as time has gone on, our governments have been so incompetent and so slow, because they're literally like running on 200-year-old democratic systems that are just way too slow for our current technological advancements. And so you get these situations where really the corporations in their creation, especially of technological innovations, are really creating their own legal systems and you have corporations that are literally bigger than entire countries at this point. So it's very, very interesting discussion, and I think it does apply to reset in the context of, if we're really resetting our economies and our societies, we need to be rethinking how law is created, and the role that normal everyday people, as well as companies and businesses and inventors, play in creating law. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Okay. Hey man, how are you? Good, good. We were just checking in. That's pretty much it. Awesome. Thanks for waiting. I appreciate it. Thanks for checking in with me. I appreciate that too. Yeah, I just got done interviewing Stefan for the Mindful Money podcast. I got another interview later tonight, and I potentially have another one at 5. And then I'm really picking up next week. I got 4 scheduled. So that'll be cool. It might be interesting, Jay, to interview you with this model that you're creating.
You mean the community equity model?
Yeah.
Sure.
And I just explored with Stefan. We got into a really awesome conversation about how people get so hung up in what they think money is that they don't make any progress in their life. And then we moved into a really interesting conversation about how you need to find your passion and then work together, and then money just flows in. So your model really plays nicely with that.
Yeah, well, we're waiting for the flowing part to come in, but the vision's there, and if we all stay on the track, it should. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good to hear. That's exciting. I have a few interview projects that I always like to do, but I never got to. So many wonderful, amazing people who need more interviews and getting their ideas out there.
And this is this interview thing is a supplement to an online platform we're building similar to Reset. So I think that'll play in nicely as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Speaking of interviewing, this particular session here with the whole community equity in group and everything, I'm publicly recording it and broadcasting it. So just to let you know, it's all about being transparent and open.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Where is it being broadcasted?
Oh, just on the Unity Network YouTube channel.
Sweet.
Maybe one day we can link up, Facebook. But, for me, the main reason I do that is because when I record on my computer, the process of uploading the video onto YouTube takes so long. and it's a whole pain in the ass. Whereas if you do, direct streaming to YouTube, it's just automatic. So you don't have to do it later, which I like.
Exactly. One thing that might help if you're not doing it already is to click the gallery view at the top instead of the speaker view, so it shows us all 4 of us equally. If that serves. I don't know how you're planning on doing this. So.
Well, I had it pretty good before. Yeah, it works.
Right,
it works because it has you and Patrick on there. I can see both of you guys. I like it.
Cool.
Coolio. So,
right, here we are.
So anyways, let's just go over the plan for today. Like, we did our check-ins. Basically, from the previous notes, there was a bunch of next steps. But the topics that we are doing here primarily are interplay, community equity, questions, and planning. I think that seems like the main task that we have today. It's basically just more tutorials on understanding how to implement community equity and using interplay as like a first step. And then there's a whole reset 1-pager on community equity, which we could discuss. And then obviously general reset plan for community equity, how we would implement it. The other things that came up from before were sponsorship details and options for the placeholder. Right now, Interplay is doing an internal placeholder where it's basically overseeing its own community equity. There's also questions about societal equity, distribution of community equity profits to actual beneficiaries, and then ownership, shareholder empowerment, and decision making in regards to community equity. So those are the things that are on the next steps stuff. So does that sound good to you, Chris, or did you have other things you wanted to bring up in the agenda, or you got everything covered?
No, that all sounds good. My most important, the biggest thing on my mind is to get the
I noticed there it is, the one pager on community equity put together. To get that put together for our sales stuff, I like that we're moving into distribution profits and empowerment. I kind of want to nerd out with you a bit about the numbers and formulas and stuff, so that we can, maybe not on this channel because I know that's probably proprietary info, but so that we can make it more efficient and effective, unless what we have is perfect. But I know that right now you're doing a spreadsheet, so I would love to tie it into some of the other systems that different companies use.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, right now there's nothing particularly proprietary about it that I know. But anyways, we'll get there. The first question right here on Interplay community equity questions and planning is pretty much jumping right into that, because we're talking about, how do we want to break up the community equity, and actually begin the process of implementing it in a way that makes sense for Interplay. So I think if everyone's ready to just jump into that particular topic, that will relate to everything else, and then we can, get into more. The other thing is we could start with the reset one pager, but that is kind of skipping a step in understanding. So
I think we could frame that first conversation with the one pager so that there's some context for some of the questions that we want to explore, and maybe we can get those questions answered in our conversation about kind of how it works.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, they're really very, very different things. But the main reason, because the one pager for me is not about how to create a functional community equity system. It's about how to sell community equity as a package as part of the membership deal. So really the one pager is not actually it doesn't really have anything to do with community equity. All it really has to do is how to make community equity look pretty in a way that it will make it more valuable for people who want to buy into the system.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's really more about advertising.
Okay. So advertising, marketing, and sales, really.
Exactly. That's what that one pager is all about.
Awesome. So let's jump in.
Okay, cool.
Actually, we can get some water because I'm kind of getting a headache. I'll be like a second.
Water is very key. So, Patrick, did we agree that we were going to start with Interplay community equity and then go to the reset one pager, or was it vice versa? I didn't quite get that.
I think that we're going to go ahead and wait. You have it listed here.
Okay.
Which is Interplay community equity first.
And what I'll do is I'll put down both notes here so we can switch back and forth and take notes on each if something is applicable.
I also have.
All right, I'm good.
Cool. Yeah, PJ, what were you gonna say?
I have the board meeting from October 8th where we where we had a proposal to implement community equity for Interplay Ventures, and we voted on that.
Yeah, so we approved. Interplay approved 25% community equity.
Yeah.
And became the 9th community equity business in the network, which is exciting.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
So, basically, we voted to keep the board, right, in charge of the equity as like the placeholder. But we did say that there is, empower the subcommittee, which is us. So there's basically a community equity subcommittee to oversee the equity or the community equity distribution. So that, it's like, it's still, the fox in charge of the hen house. But at least it has a slight, there's a subcommittee that's empowered to kind of do different. You could also even get other people involved in the subcommittee, so you could have some third-party people involved.
And eventually, could we replace the subcommittee, members so that there's not the fox in charge of the henhouse scenario.
But the fox is always in charge of the henhouse with the subcommittee because the board at any time can dissolve the subcommittee and take power.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a one-step remove where you're empowering a secondary committee to oversee it, but the board is still the one in charge of all the decision making. Yeah, but anyways, it's still a perfectly legitimate way to coordinate community equity, especially for people and groups that are still a little weary of how it's all going to work. And the great thing is the board at any time can vote to get a third party involved, right? So you can transfer your community equity from your subcommittee to a third party at any time.
From your subcommittee, I see what you mean. That's awesome. Good.
From the subcommittee to a third party at any time. Cool. So anyways, like the main question, I mean, right at this point, there's nothing more that needs to be done. You know, I mean, the community equity is set up, it's there, there's 25%. It could be a year or more before the need really comes to distribute the community equity. One, because you need to track the time, and contributions, and also, have value. If there's no value, there's no point in really doing it. But because in our situation, we're using this as an example of how to apply it to a bigger scale project with the reset, and we're using it as like a value component, we're going to go into it anyways, right? So we're pretty much done with the first part. And so, and I don't think you watched the original ones. We talked about the whole tutorial, so this is actually the third step, right? The first step is like we have the written tutorials on like what community equity is, like an introduction. And then there's the actual other tutorial that goes over setting up community equity within your organization. So we're really on step 3 here, which is actually the internal implementation. So, if you're kind of confused on what's going on, you want to go back to those other steps, but just let me know if you have any questions, Chris, because you weren't here last time.
Okay, I can do that for sure. I'm following you guys so far. A lot of my questions are going to be around the flow of things, like that subcommittee question. I love that you mentioned the fact that it may not be ready to be for up to a year. The question that came up at that point is, damn it, I got all kinds of wires and shit over here. I'm trying to clean them up so I don't keep losing you. A question that came up as you were talking about that was, how do we report on values over time, even if we're not distributing them? That's not to say, how do I, Chris, know my own value in the company, but what are like the KPIs or the metrics, or is that something that we need to define in the board to be able to say, hey, there's this much of a pool, this much is allocated toward whatever. I don't know.
Well, the cool thing about community equity is it works exactly the same as regular equity. So the value of the company is the value of the company, and the value of the community equity is the percentage of the value of the company, which is currently 25% for Interplay. So
cool. So quarterly valuations could give us that number, and then people could know how much they're investing in. Awesome.
Yeah, but the at this point in time, there's no direct value in Interplay, and there's obviously no dividends or anything, so it doesn't really matter. And but it does get more important way later on, as a company becomes successful. So in the context of how you actually track community equity and how you talk about it, though, is not about the value of the actual equity itself. It's the value of the individual contributions, right?
The value of the individual.
Yeah, so this is time, and basically money. I mean, those are the two things we're dealing with at this point.
Absolutely, yeah. And what I'm seeing, I don't want to go down too far the rabbit hole if we don't have to. What I'm seeing in my head, as a member, if I'm trying to sell Reset, and if I'm trying to sell community equity to anybody, I have some people that are interested in it. Any member of those organizations might want to know. They might want to go to a dashboard and see like some kind of report on it. I don't know what that would look like. I can flesh that out more. But the reason I bring it up here rather than creating and suggesting is because I wonder if you've created that concept yet.
So a report board, what is a report board? A report board internal to the company, or a report board?
Yeah, let me find you an example of what I mean, so that that's clear, and we can just move on until I find that example.
Okay, yeah, but I put it in next steps to think about that. So I can give you a couple examples now. So each individual company can have their own spreadsheet that anyone can look at to see where they stand in relationship to their contribution. And then on a larger level, you have what's called basically common stake and scale change. And what Ben wants to do is license with community equity to actually distribute and oversee community equity for many companies. And he wants to create a platform that would literally do that for companies. And then the other model is with the Uni Network. We're using profiles. So each individual would be profiled, and their profile would publicly list their value of contribution within the network. And then within the community equity network itself, it would really just be, membership based, So it would just list all the companies that are involved in community equity network, and then they would have equity based on their involvement in the growth of their company. So I think
that dashboard thing that you told me that Ben was working on really answers my question. Because as you were talking, I found Buffer's transparency dashboard, which is what I'm referring to. Dropped it in the chat. I'll put it. Oh no, I sent that to PJ. I'll put it in the partners group, or our partnership group here, the Scale Change Reset group. But if he's already working on that, that's what I mean. So that's good.
Cool. Yeah. and that's the only thing like that. The reason why we're even trademarking community equity is that we're creating a network. So the idea is that you can't just become part of the network without actually joining it, right, and registering. And then also companies can't distribute community equity and add people to the network without getting licensing. But anything else, is all just directly through open source systems, right? So the actual, model itself is completely open source, and anyone can advise and work on it and support companies to implement it without getting permissions.
Perfect.
Cool. So anyway, so going back here to the value of the individual contributions, we have time contributions and money contributions. The easiest way to get started is to estimate time contributions, right? And I would propose that we would be doing a back what do you call it? Backtrack system, backtrack to the beginning of, the joint development committee. That would be my proposal. Right, the secondary thing is like actual logged and hours. This is basically like an invoice or a pay. What comes before pay stub? The workers, employees put in a worksheet, right? A worksheet, work hour sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the name.
So I log every hour of everything that I do, right? That's just what I do. I have like every single hour I've contributed towards both Reset and the Joint Development Committee, as well as, everything else that I've done. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's just that when you think of community equity and the way that community equity functions, and because Unity Network is based on a community equity model, it's just the same exact thing as having an employee or a worker, except instead of working for upfront pay, you're working for community equity, right? Which is different than working for back pay. So there's working for back pay, which you need to log hours. There's working for community equity, and of course, actual upfront pay. So in that context, the ideal is that people just get in the habit of logging their hours. I mean, why wouldn't they log their hours, right? What do you guys think? DJ?
I think that's cool. I think you're right, because I do the same thing, but I don't think it's practical for more than 80% of the population. And you could say, you could put a scarcity thing on it and say you would lose equity, but it's a lot to ask of somebody. That would be my opinion, and it puts them in an employee mentality. I like where you're going, formula-wise. I just don't know if it's practical.
Yeah, and you can log other people's hours directly. For example, the two of you are here for an hour, so I can put that into the community network log, right? So you know, there's no problem logging other people's hours directly, but the idea is that they're logged hours as opposed to estimated hours. Do you see what the difference is?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so estimated hours, you have no idea how many hours they actually work, but let's just say, oh, you know, Chris put in 150 hours towards the Joint Development Committee and Interplay. Right, so that would be just a general estimate. You have no idea exactly how many hours he actually put in. So that would be the idea of an estimated time contribution versus an actual logged hours. Like, okay, today on, you know, October 21st, 2016, PJ, Jay, as well as Chris put in 1 hour. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So, as far as who enters in that information, it can be entered in by the user or the contributor in this instance.
Yeah, and I'm actually talking much more realistically. Like, my goal in the next 15 minutes would be for us to have a proposal, an example to the Interplay board that we can bring back next week that literally says this is the percentage breakdown of community equity and how much each person currently has. Right? So I'm actually talking about actual, real, right now kind of numbers, right? And how we would figure those out and what we would want to do with that. So I mean, yes, at some level, but at the same time, I'm talking about, like, let's just do it. You know, what is the time contribution breakdown? So if you have the value of individual contributions is 100% community equity, right? So the 100% of the community equity equals 25% of the total equity of Interplay. So time contribution, how do we want to value time contribution in relationship to monetary contributions? I mean, right now, we primarily have time contributions, so we probably would want to value that more. So it could be as high as 75%, and the money contributions could be 25%, you know?
Why don't we weight it proportionally? So I'm thinking scale.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we weight it proportionally against the total? Let me tell you what I mean.
Yeah.
So if there's $100 that have been invested, then there's 100 units. Or we could say that there's 10 units because we could scale that or whatever. If there's 1,000 hours that have been invested, now we have a ratio of 1,000 hours to $100. So there would be a 10 times difference, or a 1 to 9 ratio between the two when you do that weighted. I can do that in a spreadsheet if that's something that we need to do. I agree with everything you said, and to scale it, that's what I propose in terms of distribution.
So the weighted distribution can just be based on a ratio. A distribution can be on a ratio that basically is work time, pay, right? So that would be, for example, if 1,000 hours is equivalent to $100, for example, that would be pretty silly, but you know, if you did like $10 per hour sort of thing, that makes sense.
That's kind of what I mean.
So if we did $10 times 1,000 hours, whoops, that would be more like the 10,000 mark.
Yeah,
So
I see how you're doing the math.
$10,000 would be equivalent to 1,000 hours. So if you had 1,000 hours and $10,000 contribution, that would be, you know, at $10 an hour, that would be 50% equal distribution between money and time.
Say that last line one more time. If you had 1,000, equivalent to 1,000, 50. But what I was talking about with the weighted distribution was kind of the other way around.
Yeah.
Which is, we might be saying the same thing 2 different ways.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, I'm going to, on here, we can delete it if we want, but what I'm saying is, whatever the value is, so the value we variable, whatever the value is, we know that it's composed of, I'm going to use some letters here, so X which I'll define in a second, being X times whatever the amount of total hours invested is, right? And then we know that it's Y times the total money invested. And so then what I'm talking about, the weighted distribution, is saying that X plus Y equals 1. So we figure out what X and Y is based on the total hours and total money vested. The difference, so you say a 50-50 distribution up there, so that would assume that hours and money have the same. Oh, wait a second. I see what you did. So every dollar that I would going back to your model, I'm just talking this out loud because it's math. Going back to where you have $10 an hour, you're saying that that for every dollar I invest, if I were to invest $10, it would account for 1 hour here, and then you're proposing a 50-50 distribution. Here, with what I'm doing, I would say that if we're saying that 1 hour is worth $10, then I would say that would just factor in to figuring out the total distribution between the two. So I guess what I mean there is, if there were 1,000 hours invested, that's at $10 an hour, that'd be $100. Or no, it'd be $10,000. And if there's 100 hours $100 invested on top of that, then there would be a ratio between the two.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we need to go that route.
Yeah.
And that ratio would be determined on the total, I guess.
Yeah.
Are you following me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally following you. The way that I would propose it, and especially for anyone who's considering implementing community equity into their business, is that you completely separate the process of distributing the percentage of the community equity. Like, how do you break up the time contribution from the money contribution? Like, that should be a separate basically decision from the implementation of actually tracking the hours and the contributions. So basically, what I would recommend is that you would take that equation that you just had, you would calculate out that equation once a year, and then propose to the board to reevaluate the current distribution of community equity based on the outcome of that equation, and have it be separate steps, because it just gets way too complicated and confusing to do it all at the same time.
I'm cool with that. I would imagine that doing that would prompt a yes from the board every time, because it would be weighted based on the total contributions. And I'm willing to do a proof of concept of what I'm talking about, because I might need to work that out myself if that's the route that we want to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's perfectly fine. The main thing is that anyone who owns a business should be able to easily and quickly implement community equity without understanding algebra or calculus or anything else, right? So it's completely a optional thing to create a very complicated algorithmic mathematical equation to decide how you want to implement your equity, your community equity. Does that make sense? So, because the reason why I'm saying that is because the actual calculation, right? It's the actual calculation of the amount of time and the contributions can be done within the end result of those equations, right? So if your equations come out that basically you have 75% time and 25% money, as people put in more time, it can be very, very similar to the same outcome. Especially in the context that, your equation is going to create, it's going to find the actual ratio of the culture and the community of the business. And so typically different businesses will have very different ratios based on a single equation, and we can have that equation be open source and people can utilize it. But then once a community of a company basically implements that equation for a couple of years, you're basically going to get the same ratios over time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm not looking at trying to change those ratios. All I want to be able to do is make it easy and make it easy for the board who may not be great at math. to just say, here's the current standing with how much contributions come to each one of these sectors, here's the value, and then here's how much
Yeah.
we're distributing across.
Cool. So let's just start right now, right? Let's estimate the time, right? I mean, I would say that it could easily be, 200 plus hours per person times 6 people is equal to, at least 1,200, 1,500 hours. So between 1,000 and 1,500 hours. And then the money would be equal to basically 0. I mean, I don't know of anybody putting in money.
Not at this point. We certainly have done stuff with RESET, but not with Interplay.
Yeah, not with Interplay. So in that context, I would still have a percentage money. I would also even encourage every single company to have an open investment pool if they want to have one, if they need money, right? The company needs money. But that put aside, because it's a different issue, I would still say that you have a percentage money built into your community equity, but we can just ignore that and just say, for now, we could ignore it and just say that 100% is time. You guys want to do that?
Exactly. I'm cool with that for now. I think we need a quarterly reevaluation.
Yeah. So basically, the only reason a company would not put money into their community equity is if they're the type of company that really doesn't need an open investment. So an example for that is that Interplay is the interplay between these 3 other companies. So our goal is not to invest in Interplay. The goal would be to get investments into RESET, investments into Uni Network, investments into Scale Change and WorldPlay Ventures.
Right, it's an investment firm. I totally follow you
Yeah.
there.
So in that context, it makes sense that that Interplay wouldn't be based on money, which is a very rare situation for a company. So with that said, do you guys think that, so the only other question is, if we estimate the idea of 200 hours per person, do we want to weight people who log their hours? Or do we want to encourage people not to log their hours? So the only other thing that we can do is say, like, we're going to give an additional 60%. So you could say 40% to 60% for actual logged hours versus estimated hours. And you could also do that in a ratio like you were talking about. But the point is that, that's the only other thing we need to figure out. Other than that, the only other thing that we could even consider is quantitative tasks, like actually attending meetings. You get 1 mark for each meeting you go to.
And then how that factors into.
Yeah, but that's totally optional. We can just stick with the time for now. What do you guys think?
I think we should not include it about attending meetings because.
Yeah, no.
Goodbye.
No. The meeting ended. Boom, 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 boom. For people watching, they will definitely give a new link, and we'll get back on new problem. So no quantified tasks for community equity at this time. Oh my gosh.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by the enter your participant ID. You are in the Zoom meeting now. There are 3 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
Cool, we're all back, I guess. Can you guys hear me?
Cool. I can hear you.
Hey guys, sorry about that.
No, it's perfectly fine. So I think we're pretty close to being done here with the breakdown of the community equity proposal. So basically what we're saying is that we're having 100% time for the community equity that we will reevaluate quarterly. And then the only other question, and then we have no quantified tasks at this time. And then we have and then the only other question is whether we want to do an estimated or a logged hour. Like, how do we actually track the hours? And then from there, if we do go forward with an estimated hours, do we wait logged hours? Are we actually encouraging people to do hours? And then we're pretty much done. So that's the last thing we need to finalize. Obviously, I'm more into logging hours because then it's more accurate. But I have no problem with the estimated hours either. What do you guys think?
You mean, because we're estimating going back in time. But as far as moving forward, is there an estimate that we're inferring?
You're always going to have that issue. I mean, I don't think, for example, Ben has ever tracked hours. I don't know if he ever has a plan of ever tracking hours. So I don't care if someone doesn't want to track hours. And I'm always willing to create some type of estimate, hopefully by the month or by the week, as opposed to like, oh, the whole year he probably put in like 300 hours, But the general idea would be that for me, the ideal system of community equity is everyone logs their hours and inputs them on a weekly, basis, or every other week, just like a paycheck. It's the same process, and it has the same type of value as getting paid.
My take on that would be that we do a mix. So for meetings, everybody's here. We know how much time they spent here. For outside work, then they're responsible for either estimating or logging, and I do think a report of that is helpful. I would say that it would be more helpful and more practical to do an estimate, but I don't know how that looks from the user standpoint. I do think meetings can be estimated for sure, and if we can create some kind of standard estimation, that might help. But I don't think it's feasible perfectly to log. I will, but,
Yeah. How do you feel about it, PJ?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what Chris said as far as allowing for some type of logging and or estimating.
Okay.
I mean, to me, you have the ability to change how good of an idea it is to do one or the other based on the way you implement.
I mean, that's the great thing about community equity is that whatever we decide to do now, we can always change. And that's what's great about it. And that's where the power of this subcommittee comes in, is that this subcommittee can basically change the distribution of community equity at any time. So that's that's power, but it has to do so in the context of the beneficiaries. So let's just stick with estimated hours. Each person is responsible for turning in their logged or estimated hours, or the committee can estimate on behalf of someone's contribution. So I think that's a pretty good policy. And I mean, right now, I would just off the bat say everyone put in like 200, and so that, you know, you could say that at this point in time, the community equity is splitted reasonably equally. So you would just divide it by 6, right? Does that sound good? Does this seem pretty clear as far as like what we're talking about?
Yeah, it's clear to me, and I'm in with your suggestion of 6 splits, 16% each.
What? You mean 4.16%?
Yeah, it's 16. It's a split of 16.
Oh yeah, total equity. Yeah.
So if you do 100% divided by your 6 people, you get your 16.66% community equity. Cool. All right, so I think we're all on the same page there. It should. So I mean, at this point, we're done. We're done with the whole concept of what we will want to bring back to the board. It's pretty simple. You know, basically the subcommittee can change this at any time. The board can get rid of the subcommittee at any time as well. So you can see, like, over time, over the lifetime of the business, depending on the types of contributions that are happening, you can actually get very different needs to how you distribute and divide up the community equity. So at the beginning of a business, it makes sense maybe it'd all be time, but maybe later on, you know, you would want to do you would want to add in other components. You know, it really just depends on each business. Each business is going to be totally different. So are we good? Is this pretty clear? Is it pretty simple?
Yeah, I'm clear on that. I have a couple of questions outside of the scope of this conversation, but I love what we've done, and it all makes sense to me.
Do you want to put them in next steps at all, or?
It's gonna be from the community equity introduction document, so I'm gonna just link to that in next steps right here.
Cool.
And I'm gonna say answer these questions.
Nice.
Oops.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go into the. Yeah, I mean, really, as far as Interplay community equity is concerned, I mean, it's pretty much done. The only question from here on out is actually getting written documentation of each person's hours, whether they logged them or estimated them, and then, you know, slowly seeing who's putting in more time versus others, and we'll see that over time, which should be fine. Okay, let's see here. Now we're on to the reset one pager.
That's the document that I just linked to, so if you want to click that.
I would make a comment that it's important for us to have some system by which people can track their time, like, or at least to enter it. Because Jay, you do it, you're used to doing it, so you'd be at an advantage. Like, not that you're trying to gain any advantage, but for instance, John has stated a bunch of times that he sucks at tracking time, so we know, like, that is an expectation. So if we don't give him an easy way to give that value into whatever system is tracking it, then that's going to cause problems in my eyes.
Yeah, and I think between PJ and I, we can do some kind of training or provide some option for people, because I know Reaction, if PJ and Devin's company, has been looking into this kind of thing for a while for efficiency's sake, and I've looked at the tools as well. So I think giving them a standard is a good idea, and I think that standard should work with the kind of person that they are, and I might be overcomplicating it, but it's intuition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, in the end, all that really matters is getting a good just end result, you know? So the more accurate your hours can be, the more fair it is for everybody in the distribution of the community equity. But overall, it should just really just be dependent on, you know, over time, it all equalize out. So if you're talking about, you know, 100 hours, it's easy to get it wrong. But if you're talking about tens of thousands of hours, it's easier to equalize out in relationship to everybody else's hours.
Yeah, the tolerance kind of decreases as you grow.
Exactly. And again, community equity is the kind of thing where in these startups, it really doesn't become applicable for 5-10 years. If the organization is successful and the equity actually has value and you start distributing actual dividends. Cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think this all looks pretty clear. So anyways, the idea would be to brainstorm in all of the different ways you can track time, like, you know, personally logging your time. Asana could potentially use to track time. I think you also mentioned some toggle thing within Asana. I don't remember exactly what it was. And then there's attendance.
Toggles is cool. There's a toggle extension.
Yeah, toggle extension. And then there's attendance at meetings. So meeting notes can be used to track time. I always just put at the top of the meeting notes what the attendance is, just like right here, boom. You know, the meeting was about an hour, right? So, or it's about an hour and a half, whatever it is. The only other thing here to mention, which is really a next step already, would be percentage voting rights in ownership meetings. And I think that's pretty simple. It would just be, you know, equal. Right now it's like equal per person. So right now you have equal voting rights, so it's the same. All right, so are we ready to move on? Are we ready to move on? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think we are. I can hear you. I'm just laughing at the conversation in the document.
Devin. Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so reset one pager. So let's pull up the community network informational document. And so we want a simplified version.
As we pull this up, I looked for it and I sent you a PM in Slack. Can you link to the YouTube channel? Because I can't find it.
Oh, I thought that Devin already did that. Not Devin, PJ.
He might have. Let me go check. I just might be.
Maybe he did it under announcements. No.
I don't know what we're talking about.
I just took a slide aside because Jay said it's live on the YouTube channel. I wanted to subscribe to the YouTube channel, but I can't find it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not on it. Devin is on it because I told him we were streaming, so he went and checked it out.
Of course, since Devin just linked to it because he heard me ask.
Oh. Cool. I actually don't even know what the link is, but if you search Unity Network or something, I mean, eventually it'll come up. Eventually we could have like a community equity channel. But anyways, cool. So let's get back to the reset one pager. So basically this is a one pager page on sales and marketing of community equity in relationship to reset, right? So for me, the ideal goal in this would be to spend 5 or 10 minutes simply listing out what we want included in this document, which looks like we already started on. And then over the course of the week or two until our next meeting, we can be editing it and fixing it up to make it look really good.
Yeah, and some of these questions, I know, Jay, you've already answered. with the document that you showed me, you created with me in our previous equity meeting.
Just so you know, Chris, we're at view only in this document. So, yeah, but so for me,
I'll fix that right now.
Cool. So for me, the goal of the document is really being like, how cool is community equity? This is like the future of, equity ownership models where you're creating a system to ensure that everybody in the community has access to build equity from the contributions they're giving to the company, right? So that will be the focus point. And then we want to keep it simple.
By rerunning, you should have edit access.
Oh, cool. Let me redo it. Awesome. Wait, no, it still says view only. Request.
Let me verify.
Oh, I'm in a different. I would need to switch to my other one.
I can add whatever account you're in right now, so that anything that's other account you have access to as well.
Well, I have a lot.
In the group, or I can tell you which one that is in a second.
Cool. I'm in. It's good. We're good. We'd be good. All right. So, so for me, the why is really the most important. But of course, explaining a little bit about the what. But it's really not what is community equity. It's more like, what is reset membership, opportunities with community equity, right?
Yes and no. I think that people need to know what community equity is. If we answer this question with that, if we answer the way that you put this question with that in mind, like community equity is this, and here's how Reset's using it, I'm cool with that. But a lot of the people, when I bring up member owned, they're like, how does that work and what is it? So I think it's important to start with the basics as well.
Yeah, well, membership owned, when I hear that term, I think cooperative. And in some ways, membership owned would be a nonprofit. So I would say community equity is slightly different. But yeah, do we want to start answering these questions, or should we just keep going on what else we want to include in the document? Because I feel like we don't really have time to go through all the questions themselves. Unless you want to.
I don't think we do. I think what else we want to include would be a great conversation. I also would love to get tools in here. That was the intention, but I didn't outline this at all yet. And what else you want to include is I think. And if PJ had a question, you're muted, man.
How would I have a question?
John, sorry, Devin said I believe PJ had a question.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to correlate that to the current
Devin is channeling a question through you, PJ. You gotta pick up on Devin's vibrations and channel his question.
Apparently, yeah. That's I agree with you guys. I think just discussing the questions is what we could finish today, and as Jay said earlier, we can continue to work on answering those questions throughout the week, as well as in preparation for the next time we meet on this topic.
Cool. So the other thing I'll add on here is that, I think the goal of this one pager is not just having the questions, but also, because this is actually more reading like an FAQ, a frequently asked questions thing. And I think we even though we have these questions, we want these questions answered. We want the actual one pager to be explicitive, we don't want to list the questions. We just want to give the answers, right?
Right. What are you talking about?
That we're listing all these questions, but the one pager, we wouldn't necessarily have the questions. So I'm thinking something more imagery and graphics, like that we have some images and graphics on it, and the Reset logo, and have it be more like an advertisement. Is that what you guys, or do you guys want more of an FAQ where we just list the questions and have the answers?
I think an FAQ is kind of what we're going for. Ideally, it would be an infographic, like you're saying, but we're just trying to get things together so we can move into sales.
So maybe we want two different things. I think that maybe we want two different things. One is we want, in many ways, it's an internal FAQ for sales representatives of Reset, and members, right? So when members join or when members want to join, we want to have all these questions answered for them in SAQ. And then the separate one would be more of a sales graphic advertisement. This might be more of like just something that you have a link for. Yeah, link for or in the sales packet. And maybe you could even have like the sales advertisement, sales ad can link to the FAQ. So I mean, does that seem like something we want to put that extra effort into doing both of these instead of just one?
I think yes, but the most important would be to get whatever we need to get people able to sell, and then we
Digging in with the FAQ in my mind.
yeah.
And then, the sales graphic advertisement.
Cool.
A lot of the content overlaps.
Okay. All right. Well, that's really good because before I totally thought that we were doing more of like a sales stuff. And then remember the video, eventually we would do a video, and the video would be more like a sales video as opposed to an advertising video, as opposed to the FAQ, which is really going to be more like a tutorial. But we can also have a tutorial video as well. A reset membership tutorial video. All right, cool. So I think another really important thing is how do you accumulate community equity, right? So what do you do? What do you actually do? Right? And this would be something you guys need to answer. So this would be like, are they doing blog posts? Are they articles? What are they actually doing to contribute to the company to gain community equity?
Yep, and we have a conversation pending for that, so that's perfect.
Sweet. Cool. And I think this kind of relates to what does this mean for you? And I would actually encourage you guys to do a membership-based community equity, what do you call it? Portion of the pie. So in essence, you get equity for becoming a member, period.
Our goal.
And then of course you get additional equity for participating.
Sounds good.
I like it.
So can we think of anything else that would need to go in that FAQ? Let's go through more of the questions that come up when you're talking with people, Chris. What's coming up when you're talking with people?
I've intentionally been kind of steering them away from the conversation. I've told them, so I'll say, hey, it's the first member-owned media network. What do I mean by member-owned? I'll launch into it and then kind of wrap it so they don't have questions in lieu of having this. What I've been saying is that there's a portion of our equity pool allocated to our members. Our members then are able to make decisions on the editorial direction of Reset Magazine, and we plan on expanding that as the company grows, what they have influence over. That equity is noted by the amount of contribution that they make, whether it's time or money or whatever else. So I left it open, and it's a part of our membership package. So then I go talk more about the membership package.
Very cool. Awesome. All right. I think we're looking good then. Can you think of anything else, BJ? I think we're pretty much ready to maybe wrap up even.
Yeah, no, all that sounded on point to me.
So I think we're good here with the questions. I would say that our win.
Are there any questions about actually, so the next thing that would be the topic here, which if you guys want to talk about, we can, would be actually implementing community equity within RESET. I mean, what does it actually look like? What would be the breakdown as far as the benefits for the members, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be the next thing we can save for 2 weeks from now. Or if you guys want to start talking about that now, we can, but we don't have to. So
I think that's a good, personally, I think that's a good conversation for the next time we meet, because just based on our conversation today, it took about 30 minutes or so to go through Interplays, and I would expect a similar time allotment for RESET.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sound good, Chris?
Sounds good to me.
All right, so I think we're pretty much done then. I thought this was a great meeting, and we got through a lot. We have a end proposal for Interplay and a breakdown of how that's going to work, and then obviously we do have one other next step, which was tracking time options in Interplay, so we can get feedback from the board, especially people who aren't good at tracking their time, and see what they want to say to that. And then from there, I think all three of us, and really anybody in Interplay or anybody involved in RESET, Interplay can help with this document. That we should just use this document right here as the FAQ, the FAQ.
Yeah,
That's the idea. Yep.
So this would be the RESET FAQ on community equity. So yeah, so let's just do that, and then this can go into the notes over here. I'll be working on that over the next 2 weeks, and then we'll have a draft all ready for our next discussion that we can review and go over it together.
Sounds good. That'd be perfect. Ideally, we'd want to get this done sooner. I would love to review the responses to the questions as part of the board meeting on Wednesday, because we're looking to move into sales on the 1st, and 2 weeks brings us past that.
Okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just do our best. I feel like if I just go through it for a half hour, that we'll answer 80% of everything, and then it's just fine tuning. And obviously, some of this needs to come from you guys too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is after you go over it, we're gonna need more marketing and branding review of it, and then pretty it up. So there's gonna be like a week of our time document once it's put together.
Yeah. Cool. And then this would, from my understanding, we're postponing any of the advertising documentations and just doing this. So it would be potentially a month from now before we have the secondary sales graphics with the more imagey kind of model. I mean, is that okay? Or do you guys need those sooner as well?
I personally think that's okay, because we already have leads that we're pursuing. We just need to give them as much direction and information and clarification as possible. So we've already made some of those sales. Now, what the graphics will do is help us go from cold leads to warm leads a lot easier.
Cool. Awesome.
So that's.
And obviously, this is one, in many ways, minor component of the bigger sales packaging. So I guess it's not necessarily a minor component, but it's one component of what, at least like 10 different components as part of RESET membership packages. So cool. So until next time, good work.
Absolutely. Good work, guys.
Awesome, guys.
Yeah.
Take it easy.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Enjoy your weekend.
Check in with you guys on Wednesday. And Tuesdays are the day that we're doing these whole law technology discussions. So I'll see you guys around.
What time are those, Jay?
It's going to be like 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, which would be 3 Eastern Standard Time. And then we have the guy from London. So his is like 8 p.m. London time, 7 p.m. UTC. So, and we're trying to get it to be a global discussion.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And that's on Tuesdays. Cool. All right. So I will talk to you guys soon, and it's all broadcast and recorded on the Unity Network YouTube channel.
Okay, so if you miss it, you can go back and check it out there.
You can see the last one we did. It was like 2 hours. Oh my god.
Perfect. Can you send me whatever I need to be able to broadcast the Zoom meetings? I did YouTube broadcasting a while back, but don't remember everything. So if it's just a program or whatever, and you can send that over, that'll be cool. Because I think if we as Reset do that, that would be awesome. With certainty.
The only thing that I know how to do is to broadcast a Google Hangout. So right now, what that means is I can easily broadcast whatever's on my screen. So as long as you have the Zoom meeting on your screen, you can broadcast your screen to YouTube.
Perfect.
Yeah. Cool.
Good deal.
Awesome. I'll talk to you guys later.
Talk to you.
Bye.
Goodbye.